This seller had the absolute right strategy when they recently listed their home for sale. We are in January of 2026, and we are still experiencing a buyer's market. So we have also seen a ton of listings that expired at the end of the year, and they're all coming back to market. But what is interesting about that is those listings being expired. Now, typically a listing is done for about 6 months at a time. So those listings have not sold. We'll just average it out 6 months. They have not sold. They've had price reductions. They're going to go back on the market, probably at the same price. But what's already happened there is that the sellers have tested the market and the market is not responding to the price that they're at. So this seller, this property came up last week. It showed up on our MLS. And today it came through as sold. Now they got an offer on the first day. How do I know that? Because it actually says 0 days for days on market. So that means they got an offer on the first day. But what was really interesting for this and why the seller strategy was so smart is because they listed their house for market value. And they listed it probably a little bit under to get the buyers in the door and to get interest at its peak. And we all know that if you're going to be priced a little bit lower, you are going to get that momentum, you are going to get that interest, and you're going to get a whole bunch of buyers who are all of a sudden going to have FOMO and they're going to want to buy your property. Something I hear from sellers all the time is that they're worried that they're going to price their property too low. They're going to leave money on the table. And I totally get that. It is a very natural human thought reaction to I'm leaving something behind. What am I doing? I need to make sure I absolutely maximize my dollars, which I also get. And what we see is that when you price it where it needs to be, and this goes for anything, it's property, it's clothing, it's equipment, it's services, it's activities, it's entertainment. There's going to be a price where people are going to be hesitant, and then there's going to be a price where people are going to jump on it because they don't want to miss out. So as a seller, what happens is when you're pricing for market, you've already built in that negotiation room because so many people and so many sellers say, well, I want to have some negotiation room because the buyer's going to want it. They're going to want to feel like they got a deal. But when you're pricing at market or just under market, you've already built that room in. And that's also why the buyers are so excited to come see your property. Back to this listing that came up. Now, 0 days to sell. They listed at $599. The house was approximately 1,200 square feet of finished space. It had about another 1,200 square feet of unfinished space, quarter-acre lot, great size lot. And what they did and what happened was they ended up selling for $630,000. So let's really look at the meat of this because on one hand, what normally would have happened is that it would have been listed at around $650,000. It probably would have sold for the $625,000, $630,000, and that would have taken probably 3 to 6, maybe even 7 months to sell. Buyers waiting for the price to be reduced, a buyer going in, probably offering $600,000 to begin with, everybody working their way back up to the price. So instead of starting at $650,000, building in that negotiation room, waiting, let's call it 6 months to sell your house. They sold it in 1 day. They ended up in the same spot because the house was priced so well. They got over ask. They got $630,000. I think I'd much rather end up to be in the same spot in a day versus 6 months. As we're in the beginning of January of 2026, and this is specific to my area that I work in primarily, which is Chilliwack in British Columbia, Canada. It's a lovely place in the world. And what we saw at the end of December was 176 listings that expired. So typically a listing is 6 months. Now that averages out because we do see some come up for 3 to 4 months at a time. Sometimes we even see a listing contract for a whole entire year. Sidebar, if your real estate agent wants to sign your listing for a year, I would highly suggest that you don't. 6 months is good. Even 3 to 4 months, more than enough time. Unless you do have a very specific property, and you have a very narrow buyer pool, but that's a whole other video. Back to what happened at the end of December, where we saw 176 listings expire. So on average, we'll say that's 6 months. So in those 6 months of that listing, and it's been expired, that means it didn't sell. You know what? You've already tested the market as a seller. You know the feedback. You know where the buyers are. and the buyers are not responding to the price that you have on your property. So when you come back to market, you need to re-strategize, strategize for the market that you're in. And you've already had that test period. So now you can go into the much better strategy of pricing for market. Do what the house did with $599 and sold for $630. Go with that reverse psychology. You will get the buyers in the door every single time. You will have a successful sale. As a seller, remember, market dictates strategy. Take where the market is, use it to your advantage, and you'll make it up on the next side.